Welcome to Bite at a Time Books, where we read you your favorite classics one bite at a time. My name is Bree Carlile, and I love to read and wanted to share my passion with listeners like you. You can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. You'll also find our new t-shirts in the shop, including podcast shirts and quote shirts from your favorite classic novels. Be sure to follow my show on your favorite podcast platform so you get all the new episodes. We're part of the Bite at a Time Books Productions Network. If you'd also like to hear what inspired your favorite classic author to write their novels, and what was going on in the world at the time, check out the Bite at a Time Books Behind the Story podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Today we'll be continuing Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. Chapter 7. The situation becomes aggravated. The daylight was increasing rapidly. Not a window was opened. Not a door stood ajar. It was the dawn, but not the awaking. The end of the Rue de la Chevrerie, opposite the barricade, had been evacuated by the troops, as we have stated. It seemed to be free, and presented itself to passers-by with a sinister tranquility. The Rue Saint-Denis was as dumb as the Avenue of Sphinxes at Thebes. Not a living being in the crossroads, which gleamed white in the light of the sun. Nothing so mournful as this light in deserted streets. Nothing was to be seen. But there was something to be heard. A mysterious movement was going on at a certain distance. It was evident that the critical moment was approaching. As on the previous evening, the sentinels had come in, but this time all had come. The barricade was stronger than on the occasion of the first attack. Since the departure of the five, they had increased its height still further. On the advice of the sentinel who had examined the region of the Halles, Enjolras, for fear of a surprise in the rear, came to a serious decision. He had the small gut of the Mondétour lane, which had been left open to that time, barricaded. For this purpose, they tore up the pavement for the length of several houses more. In this manner, the barricade, walled on 3 streets in front of the Rue de la Chevrerie, to the left on the Rue des Seines, and de la Petite Truderie, to the right on the Rue Mondétour, was really almost impregnable. It is true that they were fatally hemmed in there. It had 3 fronts, but no exit. A fortress, but a rat hole too, said Courfeyrac with a laugh. Enjolras had about 30 paving stones, torn up in excess, said Bossuet, piled up near the door of the wine shop. The silence was now so profound in the quarter, whence the attack must needs come, that Enjolras had each man resume his post of battle. An allowance of brandy was doled out to each. Nothing is more curious than a barricade preparing for an assault. Each man selects his place as though at a theater. They jostle and elbow and crowd each other. There are some who make stalls of paving stones. Here is a corner of the wall which is in the way. It is removed. Here is a redan which may afford protection. They take shelter behind it. Left-handed men are precious. They take the places that are inconvenient to the rest. Many arrange to fight in a sitting posture. They wish to be at ease to kill and to die comfortably. In the sad war of June 1848, an insurgent who was a formidable marksman and who was firing from the top of a terrace upon a roof had a reclining chair brought there for his use. A charge of grape shot found him out there. As soon as a leader is given the order to clear the decks for action, all disorderly movements cease. There is no more pulling from one another. There are no more coteries, no more asides. There is no more holding aloof. Everything in their spirits converges in and changes into a waiting for the assailants. A barricade before the arrival of danger is chaos. In danger, it is discipline itself. Peril produces order. As soon as Enjolras had seized his double-barreled rifle and had placed himself in a sort of embrasure which he had reserved for himself, all the rest held their peace. A series of faint, sharp noises resounded confusedly along the wall of paving stones. It was the men cocking their guns. Moreover, their attitudes were prouder, more confident than ever. The excess of sacrifice strengthens. They no longer cherished any hope, but they had despair. Despair. The last weapon which sometimes gives victory. Virgil has said so. Supreme resources spring from extreme resolutions. To embark in death is sometimes the means of escaping a shipwreck. and the lid of the coffin becomes a plank of safety. As on the preceding evening, the attention of all was directed, we might almost say leaned upon, the end of the street, now lighted up and visible. They had not long to wait. A stir began distinctly in the St. Louis quarter, but it did not resemble the movement of the first attack. A clashing of chains, the uneasy jolting of a mass, the click of brass skipping along the pavement. A sort of solemn uproar announced that some sinister construction of iron was approaching. There arose a tremor in the bosoms of these peaceful old streets, pierced and built for the fertile circulation of interests and ideas, and which are not made for the horrible rumble of the wheels of war. The fixity of eye in all the combatants upon the extremity of the street became ferocious. A cannon made its appearance. Artillerymen were pushing the piece. It was in firing trim. The fore-carriage had been detached. 2 upheld the gun carriage. 4 were at the wheels. Others followed with the caisson. They could see the smoke of the burning lint stock. "Fire!" shouted Enjolras. The whole barricade fired. The report was terrible. An avalanche of smoke covered the effaced both cannon and men. After a few seconds, the cloud dispersed, and the cannon and men reappeared. The gun crew had just finished rolling it slowly, correctly, without haste, into position facing the barricade. Not one of them had been struck. Then the captain of the piece, bearing down upon the breach in order to raise the muzzle, began to point the cannon with the gravity of an astronomer leveling a telescope. "Bravo for the cannoneers!" cried Bossuet. And the whole barricade clapped their hands. A moment later, squarely planted in the very middle of the street, astride of the gutter, the piece was ready for action. A formidable pair of jaws yawned on the barricade. "Come merrily now," ejaculated Courfeyrac. "That's the brutal part of it. After the fillip on the nose, the blow from the fist, the army is reaching out its big paw to us. The barricade is going to be severely shaken up. The fusillade tries, the cannon takes." "It is a piece of 8, new model brass," added Combeferre. "Those pieces are liable to burst as soon as the proportion of 10 parts of tin to 100 of brass is exceeded. The excess of tin renders them too tender. Then it comes to pass that they have caves and chambers when looked at from the vent hole. In order to obviate this danger, and to render it possible to force the charge, it may become necessary to return to the process of the 14th century, hooping, and to encircle the piece on the outside with a series of unwelded steel bands, from the breech to the trunnions. In the meantime, they remedy this defect as best they may. They manage to discover where the holes are located in the vent of a cannon by means of a searcher. But there is a better method, with Gribeauval's movable star." "In the 16th century," remarked Bossuet, "they used to rifle cannon." "Yes," replied Combeferre. "That augments the projectile force, but diminishes the accuracy of the firing. In firing at short range, the trajectory is not as rigid as could be desired. The parabola is exaggerated. The line of the projectile is no longer sufficiently rectilinear to allow of its striking intervening objects, which is nevertheless the necessity of battle, the importance of which increases with the proximity of the enemy and the precipitation of the discharge. This defect of the tension of the curve of the projectile in the rifled cannon of the 16th century arose from the smallness of the charge. Small charges for that sort of engine are imposed by the ballistic necessities, such, for instance, as the preservation of the gun carriage. In short, that despot, the cannon, cannot do all that it desires. Force is a great weakness. A cannonball only travels 600 leagues an hour. Light travels 70,000 leagues a second. Such is the superiority of Jesus Christ over Napoleon. "Reload your guns," said Enjolras. How was the casing of the barricade going to behave under the cannonballs? Would they effect a breach? That was the question. While the insurgents were reloading their guns, the artillerymen were loading the cannon. The anxiety in the redoubt was profound. The shot sped, the report burst forth. "Present!" shouted a joyous voice. And Gavroche flung himself into the barricade just as the ball dashed against it. He came from the direction of the Rue du Seine, and he had nimbly climbed over the auxiliary barricade which fronted on the labyrinth of the Rue de la Petite Trudière. Gavroche produced a greater sensation in the barricade than the cannonball. The ball buried itself in the mass of rubbish. At the most, there was an omnibus wheel broken, and the old Anceau cart was demolished. On seeing this, the barricade burst into a laugh. "Go on," shouted Bossuet to the artillerists. Thank you for joining Bite at a Time Books today, while we read a bite of one of your favorite classics. Again, my name is Bree Carlile, And I hope you come back tomorrow for the next bite of Les Miserables. Don't forget, you can sign up for our newsletter at biteatatimebooks.com. And while you're there, check out our t-shirt shop. You can look in the show notes or on our website, biteatatimebooks.com, for the rest of the links for our show. We'd love to hear from you on social media. You can find us everywhere at Bite at a Time Books.